I never thought a dinner reservation could make me question my place in the family, but I guess there's a first for everything. My name's Lucas, I'm 26, and I've always had this quiet, background role in my family. Not the favorite, not the rebel, not the golden child, just Lucas. I show up on time, smile when I'm supposed to, send the birthday texts, and try not to make waves. You'd think that would earn me some respect, or at the very least, a seat at the table. Apparently not. Growing up, I always felt like the spare wheel. My older sister, Brielle, was the overachieving golden child, straight A's, captain of every club. Her wedding was the stuff of Pinterest boards. My younger brother, Evan, was the wild card, the jokester, the one who could mess up royally and still get a pass because boys will be boys. And then there was me, the middle child who got decent grades, never crashed the car, and quietly paid my own way through college while everyone fussed over the other two. It wasn't malicious, at least not at first. Just habitual neglect, like I was a background character in their sitcom. My parents, though, now they're the real stars. My mom's the type who thrives on appearances. She loves telling her friends about the kids, especially when there's something bragworthy involved. She'll post pictures of Brielle's baby bump with long captions about how blessed she is, or share Evan's latest half-baked business idea like he's the next Steve Jobs. Me? I once got promoted to team lead at my tech job and got a dry thumbs-up emoji in the family group chat. So when they announced they were treating the whole family to dinner at this upscale restaurant in the city, I figured maybe, just maybe, they were trying to reconnect. It had been a weird year. A lot of distance, fewer calls, and some friction ever since I turned down their suggestion to move back home for a while. But I let that go. I figured this dinner could be a fresh start. I even dressed up a bit. Nice blazer, button-down shirt, good shoes. I showed up on time, as usual. The restaurant was one of those fancy places with the dim lighting and tiny candles on the tables. Brielle arrived with her husband, Caleb, who always had a smug grin like he was tolerating everyone just to earn points. Evan brought his new girlfriend, someone named Tasha with sharp nails and a louder laugh than the jazz saxophone playing in the background. My parents were already seated when I walked in. Mom waving like she was holding court, Dad checking his watch, and probably calculating the wine prices in his head. "Lucas, you made it," Mom said with that same performative warmth she used when bumping into acquaintances she only half-liked. I gave her a quick hug, nodded to Dad, and greeted the others. Everyone was dressed up. Sipping from wine glasses like this was some royal affair. There were 6 chairs at the table, 3 couples, I noticed. My parents, Brielle and Caleb, Evan and Tasha. I paused, wondering where I was supposed to sit. "There's a small table just over there," Mom said, pointing to a two-top near the window. "We figured it'd be better for you to sit there. You know, since this table's sort of a couple's thing." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but nobody else was laughing. "Wait, you're serious?" I asked. "Don't make a scene, honey," she replied, already turning back to her wine. "We just thought it'd be less awkward for everyone. You'll be more comfortable over there anyway." The waiter came by just as I was trying to process the absurdity of it all. My entire family, sitting together at this long, elegant table, and me, exiled to the kids' table because I was the only one who had the audacity to show up without a +1. I looked at the small table. It wasn't even in the same section. It was pushed near the back, by a window that looked out at a brick wall. No candle, no wine glasses, just 2 plain place settings like an afterthought. I felt like an afterthought. Still, I didn't argue. I didn't roll my eyes or say anything snarky. I just nodded once and quietly made my way over to the table. The waiter followed me, pulling out the chair. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. Not from anger yet, more like embarrassment. The kind that sticks to your skin like sweat. From my seat, I could still see them laughing. Mom was showing baby photos to the waiter, Brielle was toasting with her husband, and Dad was already deep in conversation with Evan about some new investment he was helping him with. They didn't even glance my way. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about seating. It was a metaphor for my entire relationship with them. Always nearby, but never included. Always convenient, never central. The odd one out, not because I'd done something wrong, but because I didn't fit the image they wanted to project. I wasn't married, I didn't bring grandkids, and I didn't need anything from them. And in this family, usefulness was currency. I took a deep breath, opened the menu, and told the waiter I'd be paying separately. He gave me a sympathetic smile. Maybe he'd seen this kind of thing before. Maybe not. Either way, I wasn't about to let them lump my tab in with theirs. I'd order what I wanted, enjoy the meal, and leave. At least that was the plan. But then the bill came, and something on it made me pause. I glanced at the waiter, then back at the sleek black folder in my hands. The numbers didn't match. There were additional items, expensive ones. Wine bottles I hadn't ordered. Appetizers for the table. A ridiculous seafood platter. Confused, I asked the waiter to clarify. "Oh," he said, leaning down slightly. "The main table mentioned you'd be covering the bill. They said to just add everything to your tab. That's what your mother told us when you first arrived." For a second, I just sat there, staring. I could still see them across the room, all smiles, all laughter, clinking glasses and basking in their own little fantasy. I didn't feel embarrassed anymore. I felt cold, and I realized, if they wanted to treat me like the outsider, the third wheel, the forgotten son, fine. But they were about to learn exactly what that meant. And this time, I wouldn't be the one paying the price. I didn't move at first. I just sat there, holding the check like it was a dead bird someone had dropped in my lap. The waiter stood there awkwardly, probably waiting for a response, but my brain was frozen, stuck in this weird limbo between disbelief and a strange, creeping numbness. "I'm sorry," I finally said, trying to keep my voice steady. "They said what?" He glanced back toward the main table, where the whole family was deep in some loud debate about whether the lobster bisque was better than the scallops. "Your mother said you'd be covering tonight's dinner," he repeated gently, "for the whole family. That's what she told the front desk when you called in the reservation. She confirmed it again when they were seated. Except I hadn't called in the reservation. I hadn't even known where we were eating until this morning when Brielle texted the name of the restaurant. I was at work, took one look at the place, shook my head at the menu prices, and figured, hey, must be a special occasion if they're choosing somewhere like this. And now it made sense. It wasn't generosity. It was theater. It was another production, another perfectly curated evening where appearances came first and the rest of us were just props on stage. Except this time, I wasn't even allowed on stage. I'd been shoved into the audience and handed the bill. I looked back down. Over $870. And that didn't include tip. I was still staring at the total when the waiter cleared his throat softly. "Would you like me to run the card on file, sir?" Card on file. My stomach turned. I only had one card linked to my name. My family did have it. Or, rather, my mom did. Years ago, I let her use it temporarily when she was helping me handle some tuition payments. I never thought to remove it. It was a joint account at the time, and I'd eventually split off and opened a new one when I got a better job, but the old card remained active, mostly untouched. I'd always meant to cancel it, just never got around to it. And now here it was, being used against me. I gave a tight smile, took the check, and told the waiter I'd be handling it myself. He nodded and walked off, and I immediately pulled out my phone, logged into my account, and saw the pending charge, already authorized. They hadn't just assumed I'd pay. They planned it. They set me up. That cold feeling returned, but this time it wasn't shock. It was clarity. I stood up, trying to steady my breathing, and walked slowly toward the main table. No one noticed me at first. My mom was fussing over Tasha's earrings. Evan was halfway through some long-winded story about an argument he got into at work. One of those, I totally own my boss, type rants he always exaggerated. Brielle was scrolling on her phone, only half listening to Caleb drone on about house renovations. I stopped beside my father, who looked up briefly, eyebrows raised. "Lucas, you good?" he asked, as if I were the one being weird. I didn't speak right away, just looked at my mom. She finally glanced over and gave me this bright, artificial smile. "Everything okay, sweetie?" "You told them I was covering dinner," I said flatly. Her smile didn't fade. "Well, yes. You said you got that new promotion at work, didn't you? We figured it was a nice gesture. Family supporting family. You know, giving back. Don't make a scene. Giving back. Like I owed them something. Like they hadn't spent years overlooking me, dismissing me, and now decided I should be grateful to foot the bill for a dinner I wasn't even allowed to sit at." I didn't yell. I didn't throw the check in anyone's face. I just turned and walked away, straight past the hostess, out the front door, onto the street. I stood there on the sidewalk for a few seconds, letting the cool night air hit me like a slap. And then I did three things. First, I called my bank, told them the card was being used without authorization. The fraud team put it on hold immediately and flagged the restaurant charge as suspicious. They assured me the funds would be reversed pending investigation. Second, I logged into the card's online portal and canceled the entire thing. Permanently. No more shared access. No more old connections. Third, I called a rideshare, got into the car, and didn't look back. I was halfway home when my phone lit up. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Dad. Text from Evan. Dude, what? You just left. Text from Brielle. That was super immature. You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone. Text from Mom. We need to talk. The waiter says your card was declined. Please fix this before we have to involve the manager. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent one message. Just one. If only couples sit with adults, I guess I'm not one. So you shouldn't expect me to pay like one. No response. Not for 20 minutes. And then all hell broke loose. The group chat lit up like a Christmas tree. Dad, Lucas, this isn't funny. We're sitting here trying to figure this out. Come back and settle this like a man. Mom, you are humiliating us. What kind of son behaves like this? Brielle, you're acting like a child. Grow up. It's just dinner. Evan, yo, this is not cool. They had to call the manager. That last one almost made me laugh. Like I had ruined their big evening. Their perfect, carefully crafted dinner where I was nothing more than an extra. But then I got the message that broke me. It wasn't in the group chat. It came privately. From my mom. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this behavior is exactly why we don't include you more. You always make things about yourself. That's when I snapped. Because for so long, I'd swallowed it. Every ignored accomplishment, every brushed off text, every holiday where I was stuck on airport duty while the others took group photos by the fireplace. I'd endured the guilt trips, the backhanded compliments, the patronizing concern about my single lifestyle. I told myself it was family, that they meant well, that maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough to connect. But this message, this little slice of weaponized guilt, it was the final straw. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled through years of messages and saw the pattern. The time they forgot my birthday, but remembered Evan's with a week-long beach trip. The time I got promoted and they changed the subject to Brielle's new couch. The time I said I couldn't lend money because I was saving for a house and they called me selfish. The pattern wasn't subtle. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I did. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The car pulled up outside my apartment. I got out, paid, walked inside, and just stood in my kitchen. Still dressed from dinner, blazer wrinkled, tie half loosened. And I realized something. They didn't treat me like family. They treated me like a service. The reliable one. The quiet one. The one who shows up, shuts up, and pays up. But that guy was gone now. And the next time they tried to call him, they'd get someone very, very different. I didn't sleep that night. It wasn't because I was overwhelmed or filled with rage. I wasn't even anxious anymore. I was hollow, like someone had scooped everything out of me and left the shell behind, standing in the kitchen at 2 a.m. with the fridge door open, staring blankly at an unopened bottle of orange juice like it held the answers. After the messages stopped coming in, after the shouting over text turned into stone-cold silence, I just stood there in the quiet. No tears. No pacing. Just stillness. I'd finally called out the people who had sidelined me my entire life, and in return, they made it clear they never saw me as one of them to begin with. I knew I had done the right thing, but it still hurt. That's the part no one tells you about standing up for yourself. It's not empowering right away. Not always. Sometimes, it just feels like you've blown up your entire life, and all you're left with is ringing ears and rubble. I kept checking my phone, like an idiot, waiting for one message. Any message that sounded like an apology, some acknowledgement, even a half-hearted, maybe we should have asked first. But it never came. They went dark. The next morning, I was supposed to head to a family brunch. One mom insisted was part of the whole weekend experience, as if I were on some cruise line I didn't sign up for. I didn't go. I didn't even text. Instead, I walked. I left my phone on the nightstand and took a long, quiet stroll through the city. The sun was out, but it was cold. Wind slicing between buildings, people rushing with coffees and scarves and headphones. I just blended in. I needed to feel anonymous, like I wasn't the disappointment, the problem, the one who ruined dinner. That night, I turned off my location sharing. I left the family group chat. No dramatic exit, just gone. Silence. For the next week, I didn't hear a word from any of them. Not one. Not even a stray meme from Evan or a guilt-laced paragraph from Mom. And that silence did something strange. It settled into me like a rock in a stream. Heavy at first, but over time, it became grounding. And then came the crash. Not emotionally, financially. See, that shared card they used? It wasn't just the restaurant bill they tried to dump on me. I'd pulled the statements. There were months of accidental charges linked to that account. Uber rides, subscription services, spa payments, a $700 charge to a boutique furniture store that I sure never set foot in. And I hadn't been checking the statements because, like a fool, I assumed if I wasn't using the card, nothing would happen. I called the bank again. They were sympathetic, but because the card had technically still been active and previously shared, the disputes were shaky. I filed claims anyway, but there was no guarantee. I was staring down over $3,200 in losses. And that's when the reality sank in. I'd been their invisible wallet for months. They didn't just expect me to pay for one dinner. They were depending on me to cover things they didn't even tell me about. The betrayal landed like a punch to the ribs. But something shifted in me. It was like the fog finally cleared, and I saw the truth, not just about them, but about myself. I had spent years bending over backwards to be the easy child, the agreeable one, the one who didn't make a fuss, who didn't demand attention, who just showed up and handled things. And they had taken that version of me and milked it until I didn't recognize myself anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And being done, that's where the real change began. I started small. I pulled out a notebook and made a list. Not a list of goals or revenge fantasies, but a realistic checklist of everything I'd been putting off in service of others. Cancel shared accounts. Change passwords. Update direct deposit to new bank. Remove emergency contacts. Talk to HR about removing family from health benefits. Make therapy appointment. Each checkmark felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I started meal prepping instead of eating whatever was quick. I worked out 3 times that week, not for looks or revenge or some "I'll show them" montage, just because I needed to feel in control of my own body again. I cleaned my apartment, deep cleaned, got rid of old stuff I was holding onto out of guilt. Family hand-me-downs, gifted furniture, clothes I never liked. I donated it all or tossed it. My place started to feel like mine for the first time. Work became easier, too. I wasn't distracted anymore, constantly looking at my phone, trying to decode passive-aggressive texts. I got more done in a week than I had in months. My boss noticed. Even offered me a stretch project, something with visibility, the kind of task they only give to people they're testing for the next step up. The best part? I started saying no. No to random favors. No to staying late because someone else dropped the ball. No to being the catch-all guy who always smiled and picked up slack. I wasn't rude about it. I was just firm. And people respected it. Funny how that works. The world didn't fall apart when I started valuing myself. In fact, it got quieter. I went 3 full weeks with no contact from my family. Not even on Sundays, which used to be their sacred check-in day. I didn't reach out either. Not because I was holding a grudge, but because I finally understood something. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of family. The fantasy version I'd clung to, where I'd someday be seen and appreciated and embraced as an equal. But that version? It didn't exist. What I had was a transactional, shallow performance of family, and I wasn't signing up for it anymore. Then came the email. Of course it was Brielle. She always fancied herself the neutral party, the peacemaker. Subject line: let's talk. Hey Lucas, I think we all need to just clear the air. Everyone's still a little tense, but this has gotten out of hand. Mom and Dad are hurt. They don't understand why you'd ghost us over one misunderstanding. I'm not saying you didn't have a point, but couldn't you have just talked to them? You always overreact to things like this. We're having a small gathering next weekend. Nothing big. Just family. It would be nice if you came. Let's not drag this out. Life's too short. Brielle. I read it twice. 3 times. And each time, my chest tightened. Not from guilt, but from the sheer predictability of it. You always overreact. There it was. The refrain of my life. The way they minimized everything. The way they painted my boundaries as tantrums. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a new document and started writing. Not a response, but everything I wanted to say. Not for them. For me. It poured out of me like water from a cracked dam. All the birthdays forgotten. The broken promises. The years of being told I was so independent whenever I needed something and they didn't feel like giving it. The way my mom weaponized guilt like it was currency. The way Dad only called when he needed tech help or an account explained. The way Evan took without a second thought. The way Brielle saw everything and still played the middle. By the end, I had 12 pages. And I realized I didn't want to send it. Because they didn't deserve my explanation. They didn't want to understand. They just wanted the version of me who made their lives easier. So instead of replying to Brielle, I booked a weekend trip. Just me, a cabin, and a lake. No signal. No noise. The moment I stepped into that cabin, I felt something shift. A lightness I hadn't felt in years. I brought my sketchbook, something I hadn't touched since college. I made pancakes. I slept in. I sat on the dock with a cup of coffee and didn't do anything for anyone. And I realized something important. You don't have to earn peace. You just have to stop giving it away. And me? I was done giving. The lake was glass that morning. I sat at the edge of the dock, legs dangling, fingers curled around a steaming mug of coffee I'd brewed in the tiny cabin kitchen. No messages. No notifications. Just silence and the soft lapping of water brushing the wooden beams beneath me. Somewhere behind me, a bird sang out, and I smiled. Not because it was beautiful, but because it wasn't someone calling to ask if I could just quickly Venmo them gas money or remind me that your family, Lucas, don't make things weird. For the first time in my adult life, I felt entirely mine. But peace has a funny way of sharpening things. The quieter life got, the clearer I began to see the patterns I had ignored for years. The manipulation, the emotional bait-and-switch, the way they dressed up control as love. I had always assumed I was being selfish for wanting space. But in that solitude, I realized I hadn't been selfish. I'd been starving. And now that I had found peace, I wasn't just going to protect it. I was going to weaponize it. See, the old version of me, passive, quiet, conflict-averse, he would have let it go. Moved on. Taken the high road. Told himself that cutting contact was enough. But this wasn't just about boundaries anymore. They hadn't accidentally used my card. They hadn't innocently excluded me from their curated little dinner party. They'd set me up, lied to a restaurant, built an entire illusion of generosity on my dime. And they were mad at me for disrupting it. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a heist. And if they were going to treat me like a resource, like a walking wallet they could bleed dry whenever their performance needed a budget, then I'd show them what happens when the wallet gets a spine. I started small. Back in the city, the first thing I did was finally take a scalpel to my digital footprint. I combed through every account I had. Banks, credit cards, subscription services, streaming logins, rideshare apps. Anything with shared access? Gone. Passwords changed. Permissions revoked. Names scrubbed. The funny part was how many accounts still had their emails listed under recovery contact. I hadn't even realized. All those little, oh, just use mine, it's easier moments had created a web I was trapped in. I deleted every thread of it. Then I went to work. Literally and figuratively. At the office, I threw myself into that stretch project my boss had floated. It was tough. Lots of late nights, technical hurdles, a steep learning curve. But it was the kind of work that mattered. The kind that got noticed. I stayed quiet about my family situation. When people asked how my weekend was, I just smiled and said, peaceful. That was the truth. But at night, I planned. It started with a spreadsheet. Names, dates, transactions. I traced every suspicious charge on that old card. Matched them to receipts, screenshots, geotags from their social media posts. A manicure appointment here. A dinner tagged #date night there. They'd been reckless. Entitled people usually are. Then I remembered something from years ago. When I was 19, my mom had asked me to help her organize the family finances. She'd gotten overwhelmed with paperwork. I built her a shared Google Drive folder. Taught her how to scan and upload bank statements, receipts, warranties, everything. She never deleted it. Just got lazy. Kept uploading. Out of curiosity, I logged in. And there it was. Every document. Still meticulously sorted. Insurance forms, mortgage paperwork, tax returns, and, bingo, copies of my credit card statements. Even after I'd split the account, they hadn't just used my card. They'd been tracking it. I downloaded everything, stored it on an encrypted drive, labeled every file, color-coded every abuse. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was financial exploitation, and I was done playing polite. But I didn't want revenge that burned bridges. I wanted one that revealed them. That exposed the imbalance for what it was. Not just to me, but to anyone they tried to manipulate in the future. I wasn't going to scream at them. I was going to force them to look in the mirror. And so, I started setting the stage. First, I reached out to my Uncle Martin, Mom's brother, kind of the black sheep of the family, gruff, divorced twice, chain-smoked cigars and never made it past middle management. But he was sharp, and he hated phonies, especially Mom's carefully curated happy family act. I called him under the pretense of catching up. We talked for an hour. About work, life, the time he got food poisoning at Evan's graduation party and still hasn't forgiven them for it. He laughed when I brought it up. Then I casually asked, "Hey, Uncle M, you ever feel like our family only calls when they need something?" Dead silence. Then a dry chuckle. "Lucas, that's the only time they call." So I told him, not everything, just enough. The card, the dinner, the fact that they told the restaurant I'd pay for everything without asking me, then tried to guilt me when I refused. There was a long pause. Then he said, "You want help making sure they remember it?" And just like that, I had my first ally. Uncle Martin didn't have a lot of influence, but he had ears. He was still looped into all the cousin group chats, the second-tier family updates, the ones where Mom's perfect family image circulated. He offered to do one thing, start talking. Not dramatically, just the occasional, "You hear what happened with Lucas?" over coffee. A raised eyebrow at a reunion. A slow, "Huh? That doesn't sound like the whole story." I didn't ask for lies. I just asked for the truth to breathe. Then came step 2, setting the bait. A few days later, I posted a photo on social media. Me, on a rooftop, dressed sharp, skyline behind me, holding a drink. Caption, "Some doors only open once you shut the wrong ones." I never post. So of course, it got their attention. Within hours, Evan viewed it. Then Brielle. Then Mom. The next day, a message. From Dad. "Hey kiddo. Hope you're doing okay. Your mother's a little worried. Can we talk sometime soon?" Not his worry. Hers. And sometime soon. Not even a specific effort. Old me would have replied instantly, eager to smooth it over. To be the peacemaker, even when I was the one hurt. New me waited 4 days. Then replied, "I'm open to talking. But only if it's actually a conversation, not just you guys defending yourselves." Another message followed. This time from Brielle. "I think everyone would feel better if we just aired everything out in person. You know how things can be misinterpreted over text. Let's just talk." I agreed. But I picked the place. Neutral ground. Public. No audience they could rally. I booked a table at a quiet tea shop near my office. A place where people talk, not perform. Then I printed everything. Not to confront them, not yet. But to see how they reacted when the power dynamic shifted. The card statements. The screenshots. The email thread where Mom confirmed I'd pay the restaurant. The bank letter confirming their use of the card after I'd separated accounts. I slid everything into a black folder. This wasn't a tantrum. This was documentation. I rehearsed what I'd say, not a script, just anchors. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. And I see things clearly now. This isn't about money. It's about how you see me. You've used love like a favor I have to earn. I'm not here to be part of the family you pretend to have. I'm here to tell you who I really am. I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for a reaction. Because people show their truest selves when they lose control. And I had taken theirs away. They showed up 15 minutes late. I was already on my second cup of oolong tea when my parents and Brielle walked into the cafe. Dad in a too-tight blazer he probably hadn't worn since Evan's engagement party. Mom with her concerned matriarch face on, creased brow, pursed lips, like she was about to deliver tragic news at a PDA meeting. And Brielle, arms crossed, phone in hand, like this was an inconvenience she was gracing me with. I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I just nodded toward the empty seats. Mom sat first. "Lucas, honey. I'd prefer if we skip the honey," I said calmly. "Let's talk like adults. Equal footing." That threw her off. She glanced at Dad. He said nothing, just sat back in his chair and exhaled heavily, like this whole thing was a burden to him. Brielle rolled her eyes so hard I could hear it. "I don't want to fight," I continued. "I just want to set the record straight. And then I'll decide what comes next." I pulled out the black folder and placed it on the table like a chessboard. Brielle raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" Mom blinked. "What's that?" "Documentation," I said. "Everything from the card charges you made after I removed myself from that account. Screenshots of the messages you sent the restaurant claiming I'd cover the bill. Bank correspondence. Logs. Receipts. Dad leaned forward, suddenly alert. You're accusing us of what fraud? I'm not accusing anyone, I said. I'm confirming what happened. You used me. Repeatedly. Without asking. And when I refused to play along, you turned it into a Lucas has always been dramatic narrative. Mom's lips tightened. Lucas, I don't think you understand the full context. I held up a hand. You mean the context where I was good enough to pay, but not good enough to sit with you? She flushed. Dad muttered something under his breath. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to explain what happens next. I pulled out 3 letters, one for each of them, and slid them across the table. Brielle picked hers up and started reading. What is this? She asked. Her voice had lost its edge. It's a bill, I said. Itemized. For every unauthorized charge made using my card. With due dates. You're serious? Dad asked, voice rising. Dead serious, I replied. I've already submitted the documentation to my lawyer. If I don't receive reimbursement, we'll pursue it through small claims court. Brielle scoffed. This is petty. No, I said quietly. What was petty was lying to a restaurant to make me look generous in front of your friends. What was petty was assuming I wouldn't notice thousands of dollars missing. What was petty was telling the waiter I'd already agreed to cover it, when I didn't even know the reservation existed until the morning of. Dad's face was turning red now. You want to sue your own family over a couple of dinners and some bills. It's not about the money, I said. It's about respect, and boundaries, and consequences. I let that hang in the air. Then I delivered the real blow. I've also compiled everything into a report I'll be submitting to the family's accountant, I said. Because I know you've been using my name on certain shared assets, like the condo utilities, the internet at Brielle's place, the auto insurance under my old policy. Mom's eyes widened. Brielle sat up straighter. You wouldn't. I would, I said. And I did. And Uncle Martin's already seen a copy. Dad nearly choked. You brought Martin into this. He asked me if I needed support. I said simply. So I gave him the facts. And he's choosing to believe them. Silence fell over the table. I waited. Then I leaned back in my chair. You have 2 weeks to pay me back. Quietly. No drama. No smear campaigns. No guilt-tripping texts. If I get even one family means forgiveness email, the court filings go public. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Brielle's hands were shaking. You're blowing this up over nothing. You don't get to decide what nothing means to me anymore, I said. That's the problem. And then I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. I'll let you finish your tea, I said, turning toward the door. But just know, this wasn't revenge. I looked over my shoulder. This was accountability. The fallout came fast. 3 days later, the full repayment landed in my account. Every penny. No note. No apology. Just the money. I half expected some final message. A dramatic call. A tearful voicemail. But instead, the family went quiet. Not like before, when the silence was loaded with guilt and tension. This was different. This was a void. They stopped posting pictures of family dinners on Facebook. Brielle deleted our last group photo from her Instagram. Evan, who had been silent since the night of the restaurant, never even reached out. I guess someone filled him in. Uncle Martin sent me a text. Well done, kid. About time someone popped that bubble. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't cleaning up their messes. I wasn't apologizing for holding up a mirror to people who couldn't handle their own reflections. I was just me. Lucas. Whole. Unapologetic. Free. And the next time someone tries to use love like a leash, I'll be the one holding the scissors.